A little girl knocked on the millionaire's door. What she said next made him turn pale. Mom just died. It was just after 7 p.m. on a Thursday night in suburban Connecticut. The skies opened up in a cold, relentless downpour, and the wind swept through the front yard of a sprawling estate at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac. Inside, Jackson Cole, a 38-year-old real estate tycoon, was sitting by the fireplace with a glass of scotch, his mind deep in profit margins and zoning permits. His home, like his life, was perfectly curated, cold, modern, and untouched by emotion. Then the doorbell rang. Twice, sharp, insistent, and completely out of place. Jackson frowned, annoyed. He wasn't expecting anyone. The security team had left hours ago, and his calendar was clear. With a groan, he set down the scotch and walked across the black granite floor to the front door. As he approached, the camera feed above the entry buzzed silently, but there was no one on the monitor, just the rain. Still, the bell rang again. He opened the door cautiously, expecting maybe a package drop-off or a lost delivery driver. But instead, standing in the rain soaked to the bone, was a little girl. No more than 6 years old. She had tangled golden hair plastered to her cheeks, a unicorn backpack, and was hugging a faded stuffed rabbit against her chest. Her blue eyes locked onto his, like she'd been waiting a long time. Jackson blinked. "Can I help you?" he asked, his voice firm but curious. The girl didn't flinch. "Are you Mr. Jackson Cole?" she asked with a trembling but clear voice. "I am." She looked down at her shoes, then back up again. "My name is Lily, my mom. My mom told me that if anything ever happened to her, I should come find you." Jackson's heart sank, but his mind remained skeptical. "Where's your mother, Lily?" She hesitated. Then in a whisper that cut through the storm like thunder, she said, "She died yesterday." A beat of silence. Then she added, "She said you're my daddy." The glass in Jackson's hand might as well have shattered. His entire body went still. A strange dizziness swirled in his head. This had to be a mistake, a sick prank, a case of mistaken identity. He clutched the doorframe, trying to hold on to reality. Did she give you a letter? Or something?" he asked, his voice catching in his throat. Lily nodded slowly and pulled a soggy envelope from the front pouch of her backpack. The handwriting on the outside was elegant, hauntingly familiar. He recognized it instantly. "I was supposed to give this to you," she said. Jackson reached out with a shaky hand, staring at the envelope as if it were made of dynamite. "My mom's name was Rachel Whitaker." The name hit him in the chest like a hammer. Rachel, 7 years ago. The one that got away. The one who vanished without saying goodbye. Just gone. And now her daughter, his daughter, was standing at his doorstep in the rain asking to come in. "Please," Lily said again, a single tear mingling with the raindrops on her cheek. "I don't have anywhere else to go." Jackson didn't respond. He simply stepped aside slowly, still gripping the envelope like it held the rest of his life. And as Lily crossed the threshold, leaving the storm behind, it wasn't just water dripping from her backpack. It was the weight of the past, the weight of truth, and something Jackson hadn't felt in years: fear. Real soul-shaking fear. Because sometimes the most unexpected knock is the one that shatters the life you thought you had, and gives you a second chance you never knew you'd need. Jackson stood frozen in the entryway, staring down at the envelope in his hand, like it might burn him. Lily stood silently behind him, dripping water onto the polished tile. Her stuffed rabbit dangled from her grip, its fabric darkened with rain. She didn't ask to sit, didn't make a sound, just watched him with wide, waiting eyes. He turned slowly and motioned her toward the living room. "You can sit here," he said softly. Lily climbed onto the edge of the pristine gray couch, careful not to touch anything else. Jackson walked into the kitchen without another word, set the letter on the counter, and poured himself a second drink with shaking hands. The storm outside had started to creep into his chest. He stared at the envelope again. The name Jackson was written in smooth, looping cursive. Rachel's handwriting. His heart thundered. Finally, he peeled it open. "Dear Jackson, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone, and our daughter has found her way to you. Yes, she's yours. I didn't plan it this way. I left because I didn't think I could fit into the life you were building. You were climbing so fast, so focused. I didn't want to weigh you down. I found out I was pregnant just after I left the city. I tried to reach you, You changed your number, moved. Your company was everywhere. I convinced myself you didn't need this kind of complication. But Jackson, she's incredible. She has your eyes and that quiet determination you always carried. I told her about you. Not everything, just the good. She knows you didn't abandon her. You just never knew. Please, if there was ever any part of you that loved me, love her, take care of her. You're all she has now. Oh, Rachel. Jackson read the letter twice. The second time the words blurred with tears he didn't realize were falling. Mr. Cole, a woman's voice called from the doorway. He turned abruptly to see a woman in a soaked trench coat, her clipboard tucked against her chest. I'm Teresa Harmon, Child Services. I hope Lily didn't scare you by arriving on her own. She found me? Jackson replied hoarsely. Teresa offered a tight, sympathetic smile and stepped inside. I understand this is a lot to process. Rachel made very specific arrangements. We've already verified the documentation, but we'll need to go through the proper procedures. For now, we just needed to follow her instructions. She left this, Jackson said, holding up the letter. His fingers trembled. Then you understand the situation. He nodded slowly, glancing back toward the living room. Lily had taken off her wet shoes and was sitting cross-legged now, absently stroking the ears of her rabbit. She said, I'm her dad, he murmured. Teresa's expression softened. According to Rachel's records and the documents she left behind, yes. There's also a DNA test enclosed that matches both your profiles. We'll do our own to confirm, of course. But, Mr. Cole, it's real. A deep silence settled in the kitchen. The letter, the girl, the storm outside. It all blurred together into something surreal. I'm not prepared for this, Jackson said. You don't have to decide everything right now, Teresa assured him. But Lily doesn't have anywhere else. No extended family, no emergency foster placement available tonight. If you can keep her here until we sort things out. Jackson rubbed his eyes, overwhelmed. Okay, he said finally. She can stay. Teresa smiled, relieved. We'll arrange a formal meeting in the morning. You'll need to file for temporary guardianship while we verify the details. Jackson nodded numbly. Right. Before leaving, Teresa knelt by Lily's side. Sweetheart, you're going to stay here tonight with Mr. Cole. Okay? Just like your mom wanted. Lily looked up silent but trusting. Okay. When the door closed behind Teresa, Jackson turned back toward the little girl, now sitting in the heart of his cold, empty mansion. You hungry? He asked. She nodded. I can make grilled cheese, maybe hot chocolate. Lily smiled just a little, and in that flicker of expression, something fragile and hopeful. Jackson saw Rachel again. He turned toward the kitchen. As he reached for the bread and cheese, he glanced down at the envelope still open on the counter. Its contents had changed everything. He wasn't just a businessman anymore. He was someone's father. Jackson hadn't slept. He spent most of the night in the hallway outside the guest room, listening through the door, as Lily's small frame shifted restlessly under borrowed blankets. He'd found her a t-shirt that hung down to her knees and a pair of fuzzy socks from a guest basket. That was the extent of his childcare supplies. At 5:47 a.m., Jackson gave up, pretending to rest. He rose, made coffee, and stared blankly out at the sunrise. The storm had passed, but his mind still felt like it was stuck in the eye of it. By 8 a.m., there was a knock at the door. Not the kind that echoed like Lily's had, but sharp and professional. Teresa from Child Services returned this time with a folder and a formal air. We'll start with temporary guardianship paperwork, she said, after stepping inside. You're listed on the DNA certificate Rachel left, and we've already verified her request in her will. But this isn't permanent. Yet. Jackson nodded, barely processing the words. She's still sleeping. That's okay. We'll talk before I leave. Teresa glanced around at the sleek minimalist decor. Not exactly child-friendly in here. No, he admitted, it's not. She smiled gently. You've got time to fix that. He led her to the kitchen where she opened her folder and began explaining next steps. Jackson sat across from her nodding, when appropriate but internally spiraling. He had no idea what school Lily went to. No pediatrician, no bedtime routine, no idea what kind of cereal she liked, or if she even liked cereal. His mansion was all marble and metal and glass. Not a single photograph on the walls. Not a single stuffed animal plastic bowl or bandage in sight. "I'm not cut out for this," he muttered. "Mr. Cole Jackson, what matters right now isn't whether your home is perfect. It's that Lily feels safe, stable." Teresa closed the folder and lowered her voice. "She lost her mother just days ago. You're the only connection she has to someone who loved her. She doesn't need perfection. She needs presence." Jackson's throat tightened. The weight of that truth settled in a place he hadn't touched in years. Just then, the sound of light footsteps echoed from the hallway. Lily emerged holding her stuffed rabbit, close eyes still puffy from sleep. She hesitated when she saw Teresa, then looked to Jackson. He stood. "Good morning." "Morning," she mumbled. "I made scrambled eggs," he offered. "They might be a little dry." She gave a tiny smile and took a seat at the kitchen island. As she picked at her food, Teresa knelt beside her. "Lily, I'm going to be checking in on you. Okay, just to make sure things are going well. But you'll be staying here with Mr. Cole for now." Lily looked at Jackson. "Is that okay?" He felt something shift inside him. Something like commitment. "It's more than okay," he said softly. Teresa stood. "We'll be in touch." And Jackson. He looked up. "Don't be afraid to ask for help. No one does this alone." After she left, Jackson cleaned up the dishes while Lily sat silently nearby. Finally, she asked, "Am I going to school?" "I'll need to figure that out," he replied honestly. "Maybe not today." She nodded, then added, "Mommy said grown-ups figure things out, even when they're scared." He stopped mid-rinse, turned. "Lily," he said, walking toward her. "I'm scared. I've never done this before. I don't even know what this is." She blinked at him. "Being a dad." He let out a breath and chuckled. Just a little. "Yeah, that." She reached across the counter and patted his hand with her tiny fingers. "It's okay. You'll get better." And somehow, Jackson believed her. Later that morning, he called a lawyer, a school district, and a pediatrician. He had meetings on his calendar that he skipped without guilt. Instead, he spent the day figuring out how to buy pajamas, kid-friendly shampoo, and a nightlight. Because that night when Lily crawled into bed and whispered, "Can I keep the door open a little?" Jackson left the hall light on. And he sat outside her room again, just listening, just being there. It was the first thing he knew for sure he could do right. 3 days. That's all it had been. 3 whirlwind days since a drenched little girl had appeared at Jackson Cole's front door, claiming he was her father. And yet somehow, the empire he'd spent 15 years building felt like it had shifted entirely beneath his feet. On the morning of day 3, Jackson stood in his home office, once a sanctuary of spreadsheets and sleek silence, and stared at the calendar on his monitor. 5 investor calls, 2 zoning reviews, a quarterly financial meeting scheduled for noon. He clicked decline on all of them. Outside his office, he could hear Lily humming. She was at the kitchen table coloring in a unicorn coloring book he'd picked up at the store last night, along with a nightlight, purple pajamas, and a box of Lucky Charms, because apparently they were a special treat in her old life. He stepped out of the office and leaned against the doorway. Lily glanced up. "Did you have work?" "Not today," he said. She nodded unfazed. "Okay, I saved the pink marshmallows for you." It caught him off guard. How effortlessly she included him. How quickly she trusted him. But trust, he realized, was something fragile, and he hadn't earned it yet. That afternoon, Jackson made his first big move. He called Rebecca his senior VP, and the closest thing he had to a lieutenant. "I need you to step up," he said over speakerphone. "Take over the lead on zoning approvals, and move all investor calls to next week." There was a long pause on the other end. "Are you okay?" "I'm figuring some things out." Rebecca didn't press. She never did. "You've got it." After the call, Jackson walked to the guest room, which he now mentally referred to as her room, and stood in the doorway. It was still barren, white walls, a bed too large for a child, one nightlight glowing dimly in the corner. He pulled out his phone and opened a design app. By sundown, he'd hired a local decorator. They would bring in a plush purple comforter shelves for books and toys, and a soft rug with stars and moons that glowed in the dark. The girl who arrived soaking wet and heartbroken would have a room that made her feel safe. At dinner that night, Jackson ordered pizza. He didn't know what else kids liked, but Lily beamed when she saw the box. As they sat at the dining table, a silence settled between them. Not awkward, just quiet. She broke it. "Mommy used to say you were really smart, that you had a big house because you worked really hard." Jackson stared at her for a moment. "Your mom? She was smart too. She had lots of pictures, Lily said suddenly, of me and her and my grandparents, even some of her paintings. But your house doesn't have any. He looked around. It didn't. The walls were bare. The shelves filled with awards and books, but no photographs, no memories. I guess I never thought about it, he admitted. She nodded seriously. You should put up some pictures. It feels more like home. After Lily went to bed that night, Jackson pulled out the only photo he had of Rachel, tucked deep in the back of an old drawer, and placed it on the mantel. Then he printed the photo he'd taken of Lily coloring earlier that day. It wasn't framed, just pinned to the fridge with a magnet, but it was a start. The next morning, Jackson canceled another slate of meetings. He found a family doctor and set up an appointment for Lily. He called the local elementary school and filled out enrollment forms. He sat through 20 minutes of hold music to talk to a grief counselor. Because Rachel's letter had been clear, Lily needed love. She needed family. And whether he was ready or not, he was her family now. At the end of the third day, as the sun dipped behind the treetops and Lily was brushing her teeth, Jackson walked past the guest room and stopped. Inside, she'd lined up her stuffed rabbit and 2 new plush toys she'd picked out from Target earlier. One was a purple dinosaur in a business suit. She'd named it Mr. T-Rex Jackson. You like it? She asked, catching him watching. He smiled. I love it. And in that moment, something shifted. Jackson wasn't just adjusting anymore. He was becoming... It was a Thursday morning when the call came. Jackson was in the middle of trying and failing to figure out how to pack a school lunch. He stood at the kitchen counter, staring at 2 slices of white bread and a jar of peanut butter, as though they were blueprints to a rocket ship. Lily was already dressed in a navy jumper, swinging her legs at the kitchen island, while humming the theme song from her favorite cartoon. That's when Jackson's phone buzzed. He wiped his hands on a napkin and answered, expecting it to be another investor. Instead, it was Teresa from Child Services. Mr. Cole, the court has reviewed the documentation and the DNA test. You've been granted full custody of Lily, effective immediately. He didn't speak for several seconds. Mr. Cole, Teresa asked again. I'm here, he said, blinking hard. It's just a lot to take in. You've done more in the past few weeks than most parents manage in months. You're doing fine. He thanked her, hung up, and set the phone down. The words echoed in his mind. Full custody. He looked up at Lily, who was now chewing on a strip of bacon. She glanced at him with raised eyebrows. You okay? Yeah, he said with a soft smile. Just found out you're officially stuck with me. She grinned. I already knew that. The lunch packing disaster was forgotten. Jackson made her a smoothie instead. As he zipped up her backpack and handed it over, he felt a strange surge of pride and fear. This was real now. He wasn't just a placeholder until something better came along. He was the something better. Later that morning, Jackson walked into his office, though it now felt more like a satellite than a center, and sat behind his massive desk. The leather chair, once a throne of confidence, now felt foreign beneath him. He looked at his calendar, meetings, reviews, acquisitions. Then he looked at the photo Lily had drawn yesterday, a dinosaur in a tie labeled Mr. T-Rex Jackson. It was taped to his monitor. He smiled. Moments later, he clicked open an email to the board of directors. Effective immediately, I will be stepping down as CEO and transitioning to an advisory role. Rebecca Lynn will serve as acting CEO with my full endorsement. He didn't hesitate before hitting send. He felt lighter. That afternoon, he picked Lily up from school and took her for ice cream to celebrate the court's decision. I got full custody today, he told her as she licked a chocolate cone with rainbow sprinkles. Does that mean I don't have to leave? He leaned in, resting his arms on the table. It means this is your home now, for good. She looked down for a moment, then back up. So I get to grow up here. He nodded. Even when I'm 12? Yes. Even when I'm 15 and have braces? He laughed. Yes. She tilted her head. Even when I'm 20 and have a job and a cat? Jackson raised an eyebrow. A cat. She shrugged. I like cats. He smiled, overwhelmed by the beauty of the moment, the quiet assumption of a future together. That night they ordered sushi, her choice. She mostly just ate the rice. Before bed, she asked if she could keep a photo of Rachel on her nightstand. Jackson helped her print one out from his old phone, one of Rachel laughing on a beach wind in her hair. She was really pretty, Lily whispered, tracing her mother's face with her finger. She was even more beautiful on the inside, Jackson said softly. Then he tucked Lily in and turned to leave. Wait, she called. He turned back. Thanks for picking me up today. He blinked. Of course. It was such a simple thing, but in her voice it sounded like a miracle. And maybe it was, because for the first time since Rachel's letter arrived, Jackson didn't feel like a man reacting to his circumstances. He felt like a father creating a life. It started with a crayon, a purple crayon to be exact. Lily had spent most of the morning sprawled across the living room floor, surrounded by markers and art paper, while Jackson sat nearby on his laptop, reviewing school district ratings and pediatric dental plans. She was focused, quiet even. But when she finally stood up, her face was beaming. She held out the paper proudly. I made something for your office. Jackson raised an eyebrow, curious. She turned the drawing around. It was a slightly lopsided, wildly imaginative picture of a T-Rex, complete with glasses, a tie, and a briefcase. Written across the top in shaky, childlike letters was their Jackson Soros CEO. Jackson blinked. Is that supposed to be me? She nodded with absolute seriousness. You're like a dinosaur? He chuckled. Is that a compliment? They're strong, she said emphatically. And they have big teeth. And they protect their babies. He stared at the drawing for a moment, unsure whether to laugh or cry. I love it, he said finally. Really. You have to put it on your office wall, she insisted. I will, and he meant it. That afternoon, he returned to his office. The one that once only displayed sleek awards, high-dollar deals, and abstract artwork in chrome frames. With careful hands, he found a thumbtack and placed the crayon drawing on the wall just above his computer, right where every investor call and board meeting used to happen. Now it belonged to a purple dinosaur in a power tie. That evening, as he tucked Lily into bed, she looked up at him with sleepy eyes. Mommy said you were really busy, she murmured. Jackson nodded. She said that's why you couldn't be there before. But she said when I needed you most, you'd come. His throat tightened. She said that. Lily nodded again. She said you'd be surprised, but you'd figure it out, because grown-ups always figure it out. Jackson sat silently processing those words. Rachel had believed in him, even when he didn't know he needed to be believed in, even when he didn't know he was about to become a father. He ran a hand over Lily's blanket, smoothing it down. I'm trying, kiddo. You're doing okay, she whispered. Before her eyes closed for the night, she added one more thought. You don't yell, and you don't forget stuff. That's good. Jackson laughed softly in the dark. He didn't tell her that he'd nearly forgotten the dental forms in his inbox, or that he'd burned the macaroni at lunch, or that he had absolutely yelled once, but only when he stepped barefoot on a Lego. Instead, he kissed the top of her head. Thanks, Lily Pad. When she drifted off, Jackson walked into the hallway and paused outside her room. He looked at the framed photo of Rachel they had placed on a floating shelf earlier. He whispered into the quiet. She's doing okay. Then he whispered something even harder. I'm doing okay too. That weekend, Jackson cleared out an old storage room. It had once held unopened boxes of corporate memorabilia awards he never hung, and networking gifts from people he hadn't spoken to in years. He replaced all of it with Lily's bookshelf, a beanbag chair, and glow-in-the-dark stars across the ceiling. The next morning, when she opened the door and saw it, her gasp nearly took his breath away. This is my library, she exclaimed. He nodded. And you're reading Fort. And your dinosaur office, she added, pointing to the framed drawing he had copied and placed on the wall. Of course. She crawled into the beanbag and picked up a picture book. Then she looked up at him. Can we stay here forever? He didn't even blink. Yes. No hesitation, no conditions, no clause in a contract, just one word. Forever. The house was bursting with color. Streamers in shades of lavender and yellow curled across doorways. Balloons bobbed in every corner of the living room. In the center of the dining table stood a towering castle-shaped cake, white frosting dusted with edible glitter and delicate fondant flags. It was Lily's 7th birthday, her first without Rachel. Jackson had never thrown a party before, not one that didn't include a wine sponsor name, badges, and a press kit. But today was different. Today wasn't about clients or contracts. Today was about magic. He'd invited Lily's entire class. He didn't know the etiquette. Was that too much? Not enough, but he hadn't cared. He wanted her to be surrounded by joy. She deserved it. The doorbell rang. Then again. then again. Parents and children trickled in, each carrying colorful bags and wearing party hats provided by the cheerful event planner Jackson had hired the night before in a fit of panic. A local magician arrived early and started twisting balloon animals with quiet precision in the corner. Lily stood in the center of it all, wearing a purple dress with sparkly sneakers and a paper crown. She was radiant. Jackson watched from the kitchen, uncertain whether he belonged in the crowd of bouncy house energy and high-pitched giggles. But when Lily saw him standing there, she ran over and grabbed his hand. "Come sit with us. You have to see what Zoe brought me." She dragged him to a pile of unwrapped presents. Stuffed animals, a beginner's art set, a pink glittery science kit. Her eyes danced with every reveal. "Did you have fun?" he asked as the noise settled and kids gathered for pizza. She looked at him seriously. "This is the best day ever," she said, "but also kind of the saddest." He didn't need to ask why. The party continued with music and dancing and games that left Jackson winded and laughing in a way he hadn't in years. But the real moment, the one that mattered, came when the candles were lit. Everyone gathered around the cake. Lily looked around at her friends, then at Jackson, then at the single photograph of Rachel he'd placed beside the birthday candles. He hadn't told her about the letter yet, but he had it. Later that evening, after the last gift had been opened and the last guest had left the house, was quiet again. Streamers drooped and wrapping paper littered the floor. Lily sat cross-legged on the rug in her new pajamas, her crown askew, a smudge of frosting on her cheek. Jackson walked in, holding an envelope. "This is from your mom," he said gently. Lily's breath caught. "She wrote this before. You know, she wanted you to have it today." Lily took the letter with reverence, as if it might dissolve in her hands. She looked up at him. "Will you read it?" He nodded and sat beside her, opening the envelope slowly. "My dearest Lily, happy 7th birthday, my brave, brilliant girl. I hope today was filled with laughter and love, and too much frosting like always. If you're reading this, it means I'm not with you the way I want to be, but I'm still here. In every smile, in every hug, in every memory. You're allowed to miss me, sweet pea, but you're also allowed to be happy. It's okay to laugh today. I want you to. I want you to live, to grow, to shine. And never forget, your dad is stronger than he thinks. He'll take care of you, because he loves you just like I do. I love you to the moon and back, to infinity and beyond, forever and always. Mommy." When Jackson finished reading, Lily leaned her head against his shoulder. Silent tears rolled down her cheeks. He wrapped his arm around her and let her cry. "She really wanted to be here," Lily whispered. "I know," he replied softly. "She would be so proud of you." They sat that way for a long time. No more cake, no more music, just the hum of the house settling around them and the soft thud of rain starting again outside. And when Jackson tucked her in that night, she asked, "Do you think Mommy saw my party?" "I think she wouldn't have missed it for the world." Lily smiled sleepily. "I hope she saw the glitter crown. She always said I was her princess." Jackson kissed her forehead. "You still are." And in the quiet of the evening, surrounded by the remains of balloons and streamers and the echo of laughter, Jackson realized something. Rachel had given him more than a child. She had given him purpose. She had given him Lily. It was the deal of the decade. A downtown commercial acquisition that would merge coal properties with a major tech firm's real estate division. Valuation. Just over $200 million, the kind of number that made headlines, earned keynote speeches, and turned CEOs into legends. Jackson Cole had worked on the deal for months. Before Lily. Before bedtime routines and grilled cheese and purple dinosaur drawings. Back when his calendar was booked 6 months in advance and he hadn't missed a single board call in 7 years. And now, he was about to walk away from it all. The night before the final meeting, Jackson sat in his home office staring at the crayon portrait still taped beside his monitor. Mr. Jackson Soros, CEO. The briefcase, the sharp teeth, the words "protects his baby" scribbled in the corner. He swiveled in his chair and looked at the rest of his desk. Emails from the board, missed calls from the firm's lead attorney, a legal pad filled with projections he no longer cared about. Then a tiny knock came at the door. Lily peeked in already in pajamas. "You're working late." "Just finishing a few things." She stepped in quietly. "Is this about your big job?" He paused. "Kind of." She climbed into the guest chair opposite him, her legs swinging. Are you going to Chicago, like they said? Jackson blinked. Who told you that? Mrs. Sullivan, she said with a shrug. She was talking on the phone. She didn't know I was listening. He sighed. Would that mean I'd have to go to a new school? She asked. He hesitated. Yes. She looked down at her lap. What about Zoe and my birthday tree and my library fort? Jackson reached across the desk and took her hand. None of that is changing. She looked up. You mean you're not going? He nodded. I'm staying right here, with you. A silence passed between them, warm and full. I don't care about the merger, he added, or the Chicago offices, or what anyone at the board thinks. She squinted. What's a merger? He smiled. It's when two big companies smoosh together, like peanut butter and jelly. Exactly, he laughed. But sometimes people are happier just being peanut butter. She grinned. I like you better as peanut butter. He walked her back to bed that night, and as he closed her door, a sense of finality settled over him. Not regret. Resolution. The next morning, Jackson stood at the head of the Cole Properties conference table. All 15 board members were present. Legal counsel, lead investors, everyone. He placed a single document on the polished oak. This is my formal resignation as CEO, he said calmly. Murmurs erupted. I'll transition into a chairman advisory role, he continued, but I won't be involved in day-to-day operations. Effective immediately. Jackson, the merger, someone started, can go on without me, he said, or not. Either way, I won't be part of it. Robert Fulton, his chief investor, and the man who helped fund Jackson's first skyscraper, leaned forward. You're walking away from everything. Jackson looked him dead in the eye. I'm walking towards something. The silence that followed was thick with disbelief, but Jackson felt something unexpected in his chest. Peace. Later that afternoon, Lily came home from school to find him at the kitchen island, slicing strawberries. You're home early, she said, surprised. I'll be home like this. A lot. She stopped mid-step. Really? He nodded. Really? She raced forward and hugged him so tight he almost dropped the knife. That means I can show you my rocket project, and we can make spaghetti together tonight. You drive a hard bargain. As she pulled out her art folder, he looked at the framed photo of Rachel above the fireplace. I hope I'm doing this right, he whispered. And in his heart, he heard her answer. Soft, certain, and full of pride. You are... It was a quiet Sunday morning, the kind where sunlight spilled through the kitchen windows just right, and the house smelled like cinnamon toast and clean laundry. Jackson stood at the sink, rinsing out Lily's cereal bowl when he heard her voice behind him. Daddy. He turned, drying his hands on a towel. She was still in her pajamas, hair, a sleepy mess, her stuffed rabbit tucked under one arm. Yeah, kiddo. She hesitated, then asked, Are we a real family now? Jackson's heart caught. He crouched down eye level with her. What do you mean? Lily looked at the floor. Like, do I get to stay forever? Even if I'm not sad about Mommy anymore. Her voice trembled on that last sentence. Like the happiness she was starting to feel might somehow erase her mother, or worse, make her unwanted. Jackson reached out, placed both hands gently on her shoulders. Lily, he said I will always be your dad. You and me, we're a family, no matter what, no matter how happy or sad we are. That doesn't change. She looked up at him through those impossibly familiar blue eyes. Promise? I promise, he said firmly, forever. That was the moment something shifted, something deep. Until then, Jackson had been taking care of her, feeding her, getting her to school, reading bedtime stories. But now, for the first time, he realized she was trusting him, not just with her routines, but with her future, with her heart. The rest of the day passed in soft, golden moments. They went to the park, walked the nature trail, even stopped at the farmer's market for fresh bread and a small potted plant. Lily insisted they name Petunia. That night, as Jackson tucked her into bed, Lily turned on her side and whispered, Mommy always said you were important. He smiled. She said that? She said you were too busy to be a regular person, that you had to be the boss of a lot of things. Jackson chuckled. I guess she wasn't wrong. Lily frowned. Do you miss being important? He sat on the edge of the bed, letting the question sit for a second. I used to think being important meant people listened to you or needed you to fix big things. But now, he paused and looked around her room. The books, the stars on the ceiling, the hand-drawn sign that read, Lily's Space. Now, I think being important means someone loves you enough to ask if you'll still be there when they stop being sad. Lily blinked slowly. That's a better kind of important. He smiled. Yeah, it really is. She scooted closer and held out her pinky. Forever. Jackson linked his with hers. Forever. The next day at school, drop-off, she kissed his cheek in front of the other kids for the first time. He walked back to the car, feeling like the richest man in the world. Not because of what he had, but because of who he had. Tuesday was taco night. Lily had reminded him 3 times that morning. Once over breakfast, once while brushing her teeth, and again just before hopping out of the car at school. You promised, she said, pointing at him with a serious face. Tacos, 6 o'clock, and movie night. Jackson had chuckled. I remember, but by 4:15 p.m. everything started to unravel. The Thompson Group had called an emergency meeting. A sudden investor panic over the merger he'd rejected had triggered a 6% stock dip. Legal wanted answers. The board wanted explanations. His phone buzzed nonstop, and Jackson made a mistake. He stayed. 6:30 passed, then 7. He texted Mrs. Sullivan to give Lily dinner and start the bedtime routine. He didn't get home until 9:30. The house was quiet. Mrs. Sullivan met him at the door with an expression of restrained concern. She waited as long as she could, she said softly. She wouldn't eat without you. I finally convinced her to lie down. Jackson's heart sank. Is she asleep? Just nodded off, but she was upset, Jackson, really upset. He dropped his keys and walked straight to the bedroom. There she was, still in her school clothes, curled up on his bed, clutching her stuffed rabbit, her cheeks stained with dried tears. He sat down gently beside her. She stirred, eyelids fluttering open. Daddy, she mumbled groggily. You didn't come? His throat tightened. I know, sweetheart. I'm so sorry. There was an emergency at work. She blinked slowly, her voice a whisper. That's what Mommy used to say, when she had to work late too. The words cut through him like a blade. He reached for her hand, but she turned away, curling tighter into herself. I didn't eat tacos, she murmured. I waited. Jackson sat there in the dim glow of the nightlight, guilt settling in like cement. He thought of all the promises he had made. The pinky swear, the bedtime words, the unspoken assurances written into every routine they'd started building. And he'd broken one. To her, it wasn't a missed dinner. It was a fracture in her new foundation. The next morning was quiet. Lily barely spoke. She answered questions with shrugs and nods. When he asked if she still wanted to go to the aquarium that weekend, she said, if you're not too busy. Jackson dropped her off at school and didn't drive to the office. He didn't check his calendar. He didn't return the board's calls. Instead, he drove to his attorney's office. When Caroline answered, surprised to see him, he said one sentence. I want to sell my controlling interest in coal properties. She blinked. Jackson, are you sure? I've never been more sure. This company is your life's work. He nodded. And Lily is my life's reason. By 3 p.m. he was parked outside the school 15 minutes early. When the doors opened and Lily walked out, she spotted him instantly. Her eyes widened. You're here, she said almost in disbelief. I promised, didn't I? She ran to him, backpack bouncing. He knelt and scooped her into a hug that felt like redemption. I have news, he said. She pulled back. What? I'm going to be working a lot less. Like, a lot less. Her face lit up, but she hesitated. Really, forever? Really, forever? That night over pizza with pineapple, her favorite, they curled up on the couch under a blanket and watched the movie they'd missed the night before. Lily giggled through the funny parts, whispered commentary during the exciting parts, and yawned halfway through. But just before her eyes fluttered closed, she mumbled, I'm glad you picked tacos next time. Jackson smiled. No more next times, he whispered. Just always. And this time he meant it. Spring arrived in quiet, sun-warmed waves. The cherry blossoms outside Lily's school were in full bloom, their petals scattering like confetti every time the wind whispered through the trees. Jackson stood by the fence at pick-up hands in his pockets, watching clusters of children tumble out the front doors. Lily appeared like always, laughing ponytail bouncing her backpack a little too heavy with crafts and snack wrappers. She spotted him instantly. Hi, Daddy, she called, racing toward him. He smiled and waved. Hey, superstar. As she hugged him, her best friend Zoe ran over too, followed closely by her mom, Jessica. Jessica was warm, thoughtful, easy to talk to. Her late husband had passed from an illness 3 years prior, and her strength was quiet but steady. They had become friends first, bonded through shared playground shifts and field trip chaperoning. Then somewhere between school fundraisers and coffee drop-offs, that friendship had started to deepen. Jackson noticed how Lily smiled more when Jessica was around. He also noticed how his own heart no longer felt like a vault. That night during homework at the kitchen table, Lily looked up from her math worksheet and said something that made his coffee nearly go down the wrong pipe. "Are you going to marry Jessica?" He blinked. "What?" "She asked me yesterday," Lily said casually, scribbling a number in the margin. "When I was at Zoe's house." Jackson coughed. "Jessica asked you?" Lily nodded. She said, "Would you like it if our families were one big family someday?" Zoe said, "Yes." I said, "Maybe." He tried not to laugh. And what would make it a yes? Lily put her pencil down and looked at him seriously. Would she be my new mom? The question hit harder than he expected. "No one will ever replace your mom," he said softly. "Jessica knows that?" Lily nodded, still thoughtful. "But she could be like another person who loves me." "Yes, exactly that." She was quiet for a beat. Then she said, "I like Jessica, and I like Zoe. She'd be like my sister." Then her voice turned quiet. "But what if you love Jessica more than me?" Jackson's heart clenched. He reached across the table and took her hand gently. "Lily," he said, "the love a parent has for their child, it's different. It doesn't get smaller when someone new comes into our life. It just grows. Like how we planted Petunia together. Remember? We didn't take love away from her to plant more things. We just added more." Lily's shoulders relaxed. "Okay." She picked up her pencil again and added, "If you do get married, can I be the flower girl?" Jackson smiled. "Absolutely." That night after Lily had drifted off to sleep, he called Jessica. "So," he said, "I heard you had a very bold conversation with a certain 6-year-old. Jessica groaned on the other end. "I was trying to be gentle. Zoe got carried away and... Look, I'm sorry if it was too soon." "It wasn't," Jackson replied. "I just wish I'd been there to see your face when Lily said, 'maybe.'" Jessica laughed. "She's fierce. Like her mom, I bet." "She is," he said, "and I think we're ready, all of us." Jessica was quiet for a second. Then she said, "You know, when I met you, I thought you were the kind of man who'd always put business first. But now you're the kind of man who turns down $100 million mergers for taco night." Jackson smiled, leaning back on the couch. "I guess I am. And that," she said, "is exactly the kind of man I could love." He looked around the living room, now filled with stuffed animals, tiny shoes, and a handwritten Happy Spring banner Lily had taped to the mantel. "I think I already do," he said. And somewhere in the other room, Petunia, the little plant Lily had named, sat in the windowsill, thriving, just like the family she'd grown in. 2 days later, Jackson's phone rang just as he and Lily were stepping out of the ice cream shop, each holding a double scoop and a waffle cone. The number was unfamiliar. Seattle area code. He almost ignored it, but something told him to answer. "Jackson Cole," he said. "Mr. Cole, this is Alan Whitaker. I'm Rachel's brother." Jackson stopped mid-step. "Rachel had a brother." Half-brother Alan clarified. "Different dads. We weren't close, and I've been overseas for years. But I just returned to the States last month, and I only just found out about Rachel and Lily." Jackson's pulse quickened. "What do you want?" "Not to disrupt anything," Alan said quickly. "I understand you've been raising Lily. I'm not here to challenge that. I'd like to meet her, if that's okay." Jackson glanced at Lily, who was chasing a drip of chocolate down her cone. "She doesn't know about you," Jackson said carefully. "Of course," Alan replied. "Maybe we could meet first. Just us." Jackson agreed cautiously. The following Saturday, they met at a quiet cafe near the park. Alan was in his mid-30s, sandy-haired, tall, with eyes just slightly like Rachel's. He wore jeans, a button-down shirt, and a nervous smile. "Thank you for coming," Alan said. Jackson nodded. "Rachel never mentioned you. We were kids when things went bad. Our stepfather wasn't kind to her. When she turned 18, she left. I tried reconnecting later, but she kept her distance." Alan reached into his bag and pulled out a small envelope. "These are pictures of us growing up, in case Lily ever wants to know more." Jackson flipped through them. Rachel at 10, holding a toddler Alan. Rachel in braces, beaming at a birthday party. Rachel in a graduation gown, with her arm around a younger Alan. She raised me more than our parents did, Alan said quietly. Even when she left, I always hoped I'd find her again. And then, I read her obituary. Jackson's suspicion began to soften. What are you hoping for? He asked. Alan didn't flinch. To be a part of her life, if you'll let me. I don't want to take anything away. I just want to give her another piece of where she came from. Jackson studied him silent, then finally said, "Let me talk to her." That evening, Jackson sat beside Lily on the couch. She was drawing a tree with cherry blossoms, her new favorite. "Lily," he said gently, "I met someone today. Someone who knew your mom." Her eyes lit up. "You did. Her brother, Alan, your uncle." She blinked. "Mommy had a brother. They were apart for a long time, and she never mentioned him. But he wants to meet you." Lily was quiet, thinking. Did he know Mommy when she was little? Jackson smiled. He has photos and stories. Lily looked up, eyes shimmering. "I want to meet him." They arranged to meet at a park the next weekend. Alan brought a scrapbook and a small wooden box. "This was your mom's," he said, handing it to Lily. Inside was a delicate silver bracelet with a tiny paint palette charm. She wore this when she was your age. She said it reminded her to always create. Lily traced the charm with her fingertip. "She was an artist," she asked. Alan nodded. "She used to draw in the margins of her school notebooks. Drove the teachers crazy." Lily giggled. "I do that too." As they sat beneath a tree, Alan shared stories of Rachel's childhood. The treehouse she built out of scraps, the time she tried to bake cookies with glue instead of butter, the painting she did of their cat that won a school art contest. Jackson watched quietly as Lily soaked in every word, every detail. Later, as they walked home, Lily slipped her hand into Jackson's. "I liked him," she said. "He made Mommy feel real again." Jackson squeezed her hand. "That's exactly what I hoped." And for the first time in a long time, Lily seemed lighter, more whole, like the missing pieces of her story were finally finding their way home. The front door burst open just before noon, and Lily bounded inside, cheeks flushed, arms wide. "Uncle Alan's here," she shouted. It was her 9th birthday. 2 years had passed since that stormy night she showed up on Jackson's doorstep, clutching a letter and a stuffed rabbit. And now, she was light, confident, growing taller by the day, with a laugh that filled the house. The apartment buzzed with joy. Colorful streamers hung from every beam, a hand-painted banner stretched across the kitchen that read, "Happy Birthday, Lily," and the smell of chocolate cake drifted from the counter. Jessica was there too, helping Mrs. Sullivan arrange snacks on the table. Zoe and her other school friends swarmed the living room, giggling and comparing birthday gifts. Jackson stood in the doorway, watching it all, like a dream he never meant to have, but now couldn't imagine losing. After the candles were blown out, Lily doing it in one dramatic breath with arms raised overhead, Jackson handed her a small envelope. She recognized it instantly. "From Mommy." He nodded. Lily held the envelope to her chest for a moment, then climbed onto the couch. "Can you read it?" Jackson sat beside her, carefully unfolding the letter. "And my dearest Lily, happy 9th birthday. You're growing into such a beautiful soul. By now you've lived longer without me than with me. That breaks my heart, but I find comfort knowing you're surrounded by love. 9 is a magical age. Don't let the world make you grow up too fast. Keep making messes. Keep laughing until your belly hurts. Keep asking impossible questions. This year I have a special request plant. Something. A tree, a flower, anything. Nurture it. Watch it grow. Let it remind you that love, when cared for, gets stronger every day. I love you infinitely. To the moon, to the stars, and back again. Love, Mommy." Lily's eyes glistened, but she didn't cry. Not this time. Instead, she smiled. "Can we plant something, Daddy?" Jackson swallowed the lump in his throat. "Of course. What do you want to plant? A cherry tree? Mommy loved cherry blossoms, right?" Alan nodded from across the room. She said they were proof that even the most beautiful things return. Lily lit up. "Can we put it outside my window?" Jackson hesitated. Their apartment didn't have a yard. But then Jessica stepped closer, sharing a quick glance with him. "We've been thinking about moving," she said softly, "to a house, with a yard, and room for everyone." Lily gasped. "All of us together." "If that's what you want," Jackson said, his voice gentle. Lily's smile grew impossibly wide. and maybe a dog. The adults laughed. "Let's start with the tree," Jackson said. "Then we'll talk about paws." That night, after the guests had gone and the cake crumbs had been cleared, Jackson stood in the doorway of Lily's room. She was already in bed, bracelet from her mom on her wrist, the letter tucked beside her pillow. "Daddy," she said sleepily, "do you think Mommy would be happy?" Jackson crossed the room and sat on the edge of her bed. He looked around at the drawings taped to the walls, the bookshelf overflowing with unicorn novels and science kits, the glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling. He looked at his daughter, strong, radiant, deeply loved. "I think she'd be very happy," he said. Lily nodded, once satisfied. It was the best birthday ever. Better than last year. She grinned. "Every year's better, because we're together." Jackson leaned down and kissed her forehead. "Happy birthday, Lily Pad." As she drifted off to sleep, he sat there a moment longer, watching her breathe, thinking about Rachel, thinking about love. Love that didn't die, love that grew. Outside the window, the moon rose over the city, and somewhere, soon, there would be a cherry tree planted in the soil of a new beginning. In the end, it wasn't the wealth or the success or the towering skyline Jackson Cole had once commanded that defined his legacy. It was a drawing taped to a refrigerator, a bracelet passed from mother to daughter, a promise made over tacos and tucked gently beneath a nightlight. It was a girl named Lily who arrived in a storm with nothing but a letter and hope in her eyes, and who over time transformed a house of glass and stone into a home filled with laughter, noise, and love. Through her, Jackson rediscovered parts of himself he'd long forgotten: vulnerability, wonder, joy. He learned that sometimes being a father wasn't about having all the answers. It was about being present, being patient, and showing up over and over again even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. He let go of the empire he'd built and embraced the quiet, enduring strength of bedtime routines and birthday candles, of choosing family when no one else would, of planting something that would grow. Rachel's letters became a map, a bridge connecting past to future. And Lily, she was the reason for every turn, every decision, every sacrifice that didn't feel like a sacrifice at all. Because love, when nurtured, does not fade. It blossoms. And like a cherry tree blooming anew each spring, it reminds us even after loss, even after silence, life returns. Brighter, stronger, more beautiful than before.